Kumlen and Ablat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Lamed Vav, and we are up to the Gemara. The last thing we learned was Rabbi Yirmiyah saying how it's possible sometimes, to make a false shvua. You bring a karban chatas if there's no money involved, just a false shvua. You bring a karban option if there's money involved. And he gave us an example how sometimes the seicha, the original renter, sometimes the person he borrowed to, something both. Now go up to the Gemara over here, a new Gemara. The Gemara starts off right in the middle of the page. Itmar, first word of the line is Itmar. We already had this Gemara previously in Bava Kama, where the question is, can one shamer give it to another responsible person to mind for them as well? So we have a machlekes. Now there's two possible, there's three possible scenarios. You gave it to another shamer equal to you, in the same status as you. For example, you're a shamer sachar. Right, and you get paid for what you're doing, and you have certain responsibilities, and you pass it on to another shemer zacher. That's one option. Another one is where you give it to somebody who's more responsible than you. Let's give it to a borrower who has to pay for everything practically, or one where you diminish and reduce the shmira. Give it, let's say, to a shemer chinim, is only liable for negligence. So what would it be in these cases? Then something happened. Something happened that the original guy would have been potter. So if one shemer passed it on to another shemer, Rav Omar potter. Rav says that you are potter. Rabbi Yechina says you are chayv. Now, machlekes Abaye and Rava had to understand. Amar Abaye says the time made it Rav. According to Rav, it says that if one shemer passes on to another responsible person, then an accident happens. You are potter. There's no negligence involved in passing it on to another person. So, I don't have to tell you in a case where shemer chinam, shemasel shemer sacha, yeah, he's definitely more responsible, more careful than Aluya lives when also he improves the shmira. Surely you are potter. But the chiddush is the degree you got a l'shmira. So even though you diminish the shmira, potter you are potter. Why? My time he gave it to a responsible person, not to a cheirish advocate. You gave it to a responsible person, and therefore you did not in any way betray the trust of the original owner, and there's no negligence involved. All the time, Rabbi Yechina says that a shemer shemasel shemer, he says is actually chayiv. That means even if something happened that the original guy would have been potter, but in this case, because you pass it on to somebody else, he says you are chayiv. Let's say an oinus happens, and you're a shemer chinam or a sacher, nevertheless, you are potter. We say here that there's nevertheless you're chayiv. The time Rabbi Yechina says you're always chayiv. If you diminished the shmira, and therefore, even though an oinus happened, that's sort of negligence. Surely you're chayiv. The degree me got on the you diminish the shmira. You improve the shmira. He holds you chayiv. Why chayiv? And here we have a machlekes Abaye and Rava. What the logic is? Why you chayiv? So Abaye says that like this. Abaye. Normally says to him, I don't want. I gave it to you to mine. I didn't ask him. I don't want. If I wanted the other guy to do it, I would have given it myself. So therefore, therefore you are chayiv. What exactly does it mean? Taisus says it doesn't mean because you didn't listen to me. Therefore, whatever happens, you are chayiv. As we'll see more later, sometimes you're not. It's as if the owner said that if you gave it to somebody else, you're being negligent. I gave it to you, I want you to mind it. You do me a favor, or I'm paying whatever it is, or you're paying me. But if you gave it to somebody else, that is considered negligence. And if for any accident that occurs later on, if at all, that accident can be associated to the fact that you gave it to another person, you're going to be held responsible. And for the stay by you, it wouldn't have happened. For example, if you gave it to someone else and died a natural death, we can still hold you responsible because maybe it wasn't just the malach hamobus who decided to put a lens light. Maybe stale air over there, or exactly pollution, or whatever it is.
But there has to be acceptance of what's the normal conditions. I mean, also you gave your animal to a shepherd to look after, yeah.
Yeah.
So the shepherd has to go to the bathroom. for him sometimes. So you have to know that when you give it to a shepherd, sometimes he takes a 5-minute break.
But when you give the shepherd, you take all these things into consideration.
That's what I'm saying. So the normal circumstance of the normal level of
exactly. Okay. So what Tay's saying is as if in a nutshell, learning is we very learned this above a comma. If one shemer passes on to another shemer, according to Rav, you gave it to a responsible person. I don't care, even if you diminish the shmirah, you are potter. But according to Rabbi Yechanan, even if you improve the shmirah, for example, you were a shemer chinim and you gave it to a shemer sacha, you gave it to a shoyel, they're much more careful, and then an oinus happened, you are still chayiv. And why? Because according to Abaya, he says, the owner says, I gave you the bekudden to mine, not to somebody else. And the word is that it's as if it made up with you that if you give to anybody else, I consider you negligent. And if anything happens in another person's house, that I can it's a bit remote, but if I can in any way associate the fact that you put it in another person's house, I'll treat it as negligence. For example, if you died natural causes, maybe because of stale there, or maybe he wasn't fed properly, something like that. Doesn't matter further. This is the Rav that said that a shemet is pot. We never actually heard him say that. It's just from a certain event that happened that we interpreted. That's what happened. That's what happened. Ella Miklola, the Hanaganoi, the gardener, the Cholyema, that he's after every single day. The owner used to give things to this older woman to mind for them. One day the owner gave that to these gardeners. He said, "Look, Anarash, can you mind this thing for me?" Shama Kola Behilula. He heard there was a wedding going on, so Nafak Ozel Afkedin Legabedahi Safta. So he couldn't watch anymore. So he went to this elderly woman that he knows that the owner every single day used to give something to her to mind. And he said, "Do you mind? I'm watching this." It got stolen. Also, the Kabbalah came for Rav Potter. Rav heard the story and he said, "You know what? This is Potter." Now, why did he Potter this gardener? So we understood because Shemesh, Moshe Shemesh gave it to an honest person is good enough. Man the Chazas Savim Shem Shemesh Moshe Shemesh Potter, but V'loi is not the case. Shiny Hasan is different. The Chol Yemen Nami Inu Gufay Gabia Gaboda Yisafta Neftu. It's different. That's Tam Levolta, and you gave it to another person. You gave it to a person that the owner already has proven to us he trusts implicitly because he gave it to this old woman every single day. That's why Rav said Potter. But could be if he would have given it to a stranger. Said, "Do me if you mind it, even if you improve the shmirah, maybe then it's other negligence. As if it made up with you, whatever you do, if you give it to somebody else, anything happens, it's your fault." So there's no raya necessarily that's what Rav holds. Says the Gemara. Yes, Rabami repeated this Gemara. Abba Mama asked a question to Rabami. In our Mishnah it says, right? Shimon rented a parah from his friend, and then he what do you call it? He lent it to Levi. The Meitze Kedarka died in Levi's Rishos Kedarka. We say Shimon is potter as a soicher, and then Levi, the Tanakhama says, Levi has to reimburse Shimon. Yeah, not about Yeshu says Kate and I can make a business out of it. Either did it Yeshua Soicher to make a document, but Hashem Shav Soicher. Now the question is, Im Isa. If Rabbi Yechon is right, the original is saying, I don't care if this happened in Levi's Rishus. You had no right to give it to Levi, and therefore Chai. If Im Isa let him tell him, Ain't it Soini she hate Pigdoini Biyad Acha? I don't want it's a riot to Rav. That you are potter. Now, even according to Rav, that says Shemesh 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 Potter. Potter means you're potter from paying any liabilities, but still also you shouldn't be giving it to somebody else. If you ask the Rav will say, of course you're not allowed to. The only question is whether there's liability here because an ain has happened. Is there liability for giving somebody else? Anyway, we're starting on Mishnah. Our Mishnah is a unique case. In Chachma you're talking about the owner said to him, I don't mind if you lend it to Levi. If the owner consented to go ahead and lend it to Levi, he says if it's a tantamount to Reuben lending it to Levi. So Levi l'chayda should deal directly with Reuben. Why is Levi paying Shimon and Shimon's potter to Reuben if Reuben was involved in the loan itself? The he said, "This is Shimon. I'm going to lend to Levi. It's up to you. It's up to you." Mosi, so no cash over here because it's not a case of Shimon because the owner agreed. You can't say when you yourself said you don't mind. Asked a question from a further Mishnah. Mafkin Mois if Reuben gets to give Shimon something to mine money for him, and he bundled it up. If Shimon then takes the money and puts it behind him, which means that it's very easy to steal. Someone just walks right behind him and cuts off, whatever it is holding on to him, and then steals it. Or Moson Libnoi Bitaktani. He's an irresponsible actor. He gave it to his young minor children to mine. And the name should grow, or he didn't close the door properly. In all these cases, chayiv, you are chayiv. In all cases, you're responsible. He didn't watch it diligently enough. So it seems to me, the problem was he gave it to children Tanya. What about if he were given to children who were gedolim? Then that's responsible. Clearly, Shemish is potter. The kind of the potter. Am I why namely ain't it shiny shape? You said, "Oh, what might pick on to be by anybody else but you? What's the killing the older children, younger children?" Just like you said before, shepherd. Call a mafkid al das ishte bonamafkid. You know that this person is not going to be home 24 hours a day. You know that when you say to the person, you mean anybody who's in the house will mind it as well. So that's what the owner intended. Amri Nadoi, so Nadoi said that Chacham Nadoi said will actually prove it to you from this very, very Mishnah. Well, how will prove the Mishnah? Take it on me. According to the Mishnah, Oishem Maston Lebnoi Ubita Knaim. It says he gave it to his children. I'm going to prove to you that generally Shemesh Shemasal Shemesh might be chayiv, but over here you're potter because it's the children of the person he gave his wife. Because it says he gave it to his minor children. Why talk about his? Just say give it to any children. Give it. He gave it to a child. That's a responsibility. Why not his children? In order to make the dig, but his children who are older, it's all right. But anybody else's children, I don't care how old they are, minor, adults, you're not allowed to. Shemesh, Mashal, Shemesh is chayiv. Here is unique. Here is different because it's the children of the person you asked to mind. They cannot be. The Torah says, "Shemesh be a tani chayiv." Hold up, be the old one part. McLeod, Lacheda, but all other people. I don't care who they were, adults or minors. Chayiv, because otherwise you can't at least say tanim stam. Why his children? Just say stam tanim. Shmamina is an eye that want to forget that Shemesh, Mashal, Shemesh is chayiv. Is chayiv. According to Bayer, what's he do? Why Taka says bon up? Or according to Rav, it says Shemish Moshe Shemish Potter. The way Bayer understood Rav, that Shemish Moshe Shemish Potter. So why Taka doesn't say bon of Tanim as if only bon of Dalim is permitted anybody? Because the chiddush is that we would have thought that bon of Tanim are also included in this assumption that people know that people go to work. So the adults are all out of the house. Sometimes only little kids are in the house. And maybe it's as if he agreed that little kids can mind it as well. That's what we'd have thought. So the chiddush is that even this person's little kids, if they're minors, they cannot be held responsible, and therefore it's irresponsible to let them mind it. So nothing to do with the diak. What about others? The diak is that even their own children, or children of the person that the nifkid, you cannot rely on. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav is the Rav, the final conclusion. Hilchos Shemesh Moshe Shemesh Chayiv. The Rav holds halacha is like aviation. That if one Shemesh gives us another Chayiv, and loyme by Shemesh Socha Shemesh Shemesh where you reduce the Shmirah, common sense said with the Chayiv. The Guru Galash Rasi made it weaker. And La Filu Shemesh Shemesh Chayiv. My time, why? The Amalei said no. Abaye said the reason is Ein the Tzayni Shehei Pegdani B'Yanach. I don't trust the other person minding my object. Rav said that's not the reason. Rav said the reason is at mehemedly b'shua hey chloi mehemedly shua. I trust you. I don't care where the guy swears. I don't accept the shua. I trust you. If you tell me what happened, I trust you. Which means the nafkamim to the Bayin Rav would be what happened. It happened that the first shomer was standing there when the oinus happened by the second shomer. So the first shomer is capable of swearing. The animal died. It was natural causes, or died as an accident. Because he was there. So according to Rav, and then Shemesh Moshe will be potter because you can't say I don't trust the other guy. I thought he's not swearing. It's this first Shemer is swearing. I saw what happened.
It's interesting that the Byron is actually taking into account that there's a high chance that something's going to happen.
Even a low chance.
Because he's already been nitty-gritty of who am I going to trust in court when I go to see something.
Okay. But according to Abaya's reason, I don't trust him with the pagode. It doesn't matter then if the first guy was there.
But you should never sure. Yeah, sure is only what I know something's going to happen. I don't know.
You take all precautions in mind. Why do you get insurance for your house and you pay a fortune every year in case he ever gets robbed or so whatever? Okay, Itma, and we'll come back to this Rabba by the way later on. Itma, we learned the general principle called Chiloshe B'Pshir. We'll learn about later as well. The Soifa B'Ains. You were negligent, but it turned out to be that the problem that arose had nothing to do with your negligence, something totally outside that. But the point, what you did was negligent as far as this concern was. So, do we say that you're responsible because we consider the whole thing a pshir? Or do we say we just focus on what happened at the time and was an oinus? Being machek is a shining. If you hold chilas pshir v'seifa ba'oinus yechayev, does the oinus have to have any correlation to the pshir? In other words, has it not been for the pshir, the oinus would not have happened either. Then it's not. Then therefore we'll hold you. How many shaykhs? Therefore, chilas b'pshir v'seifa in chayev because it's something to do with pshir. Or the Rif and all those who agree with the Rif, they hold even if the oinus is totally unrelated. You already did the pshir. You already did the pshir, and therefore you chayiv. It doesn't matter what happened afterwards. Since you cannot return the animal, you became chayiv the moment that you did your pshir. And oinus happened later, but you're not able to pay back. Since you're chayiv, once you're chayiv, you have to pay back. So there's two ways of paying it back. One way is the animal's still around, and one way if the animal's not around, you got to pay. So since the animal's not around anymore, I don't care what happened to the animal. You already pesheya. Therefore, you are chayiv. I don't care what the oinus is. The others hold no, that it's as if it started the pshir, but it ends when the oinus happened, and that's what you're chayiv for that oinus. But if the oinus is anyway related to that original pshir, then we'll say you're chayiv. But if it's not related, then who cares that you left the gate open in the barn? The fact is that what happened at the end was so let's remember that machlekes will come now. This come on here. Even we learned Pasha the Yotzlag. Here, have a case. You were Pesheya, left the door wide open, and it went out somewhere in the wilderness, in the marsh, Umeisikadarka. But it died natural causes, like Philip Shizarvinus. There's a Abaye mashmei the Rabbam, very strong words, Chayiv. And Rabba mashmei the Rabbam Potter. You don't have that often, that Abaye and Rabba argue what Rabba actually said. Abaye mashmei the Rabbam Chayiv, Kol Dina, the Lloyd Doinka Haidina. If you don't judge the way I'm saying right now, love Dina, he's not worth the soul. He's not dying. And why? You don't have to say according to the opinion which you'll learn later on. For example, if somebody gave you money to mine, you're supposed to, we'll learn the end of the payday, you're supposed to put it in the karka. That's the best place to hide it. But you put it somewhere which is combustible. It can be burnt. So you didn't store it in the proper place. But what happened then was it was stolen. And the Shemichin is potter from Neva. So that's called chiloseh b'pshir. As far as fire is concerned, it was negligent. But to say something else happened, it was stolen. So even the Abaye, even the one who says, according to what sure you left the gate wide open and let it go out somewhere which is can be taken away or whatever. But at the end, it died natural causes. And even when it says pot my time with Damin will say it's your fault. Havola dagma kaplan. That what that the stale air, the bad air around that area, full of mosquitoes, whatever it is a cause. So Abaye says it's not an oinus. There's what do you call it? A little bit of culpability here, and therefore you're chayiv. In other words, by the case where it was stolen, the pshir in the beginning had no bearing on the oinus that happened then. It could have burned. There's a pshir that got to be burning, but so what happened? It was stolen. It could have been stolen anyway. But over here, Abaye is saying that the oinus of them is related to the pshir. So according to everybody, this is like a strong relationship, and that is the foul layer there. That's Abaye. Rabba says, and he says, "Call Dinah, I didn't love Dinah." So half of the young in Israel who agree with Abaye go to Rabba, they work, and vice versa. He said, "Why that your potter? Why potter? The man the potter. He says, Rabba says, I don't attribute the death to any particular cause. I say the famous saying, Malach Hamavi, time is up. Mali Hocha Mali Hasan, can't run away. The faith Melech, where he was told that this person is gonna die. This is his day. So Melech said to him, far away, and it turned out to be that something happened over there, and he died. Dafka when he was there. Malach Hamavis got Shlomelech to send him to the place where he had to be in order to die that day. No, Malach Hamavis, he has a job to do. Mali Hocha Mali Hosa. My time in Malach Hamavis, Mali Hocha Mali Hosa. The onus that happened then, it died natural causes, is totally unrelated to the initial Pshir. So according to everybody, he said, Robert says in this case you're totally positive because Malach Hamavis, Mali Hocha Mali Hosa. And in the case over there, even though you're a Pesher Gabi Fire, you're not a Pesher Gabi Gneva. But over there, there's a little bit your fault, a little bit, because if you maybe kept it in your house instead of putting it out there outside of it, maybe nothing would have happened. So a little bit, but here, in natural causes, there's nothing you could have done. It makes a difference where you are. So Abai, who says that you're chaye because he says that it's a stay away. He's moida. So let's say you returned it back to the owner of the shema, returned it back to the owner and died afterwards of potter. My time, the other way, in fact, he gave back. So therefore, in that case, for sure, he's potter. He terminated his shmita. But let them have all the agma kaplan. Can't say because then would die straight away. Umayda Rava said that you are potter. He's Mayda because heicha the igile gonna ba'agam the basic. What happens if it was stolen by a gun? Let's say a shrei mesach. Shrei mesach is chayv by baby. Okay, so Shimon was shrei mesach from Reuben, and then Levi stole it from Shimon, and then it died from natural causes. So l'chayda, Shimon says to the owner, Malach Hamavis, Mali Hocha, Mali Hosa, whether the guy stole it, they wouldn't have stolen it, it would have been in my house, it would have died anyway. What do you want from me? Why should I pay you? Malach Hamavis, the Rabbi is in this case you have to pay. Why? Because the moment it was stolen, you already were chayiv. You don't become exonerated afterwards if it died natural causes. He says, "Moed Rabbi Galhech Diga Gan Bagam, but Mesik died natural causes. But Gan in the house of the Gan the Chayiv. By time of why? But Ishavka Malach Hamavis a basic Gan have a kind of. Because we look at it differently. We say that if the Malach Hamavis would not have come around, where would the item been? In the Gan's house. In other words, the moment the Gan stole it, you, the Shaycha, became already Chayiv. And therefore, it doesn't matter what happens afterwards. And the Malach Hamavis. Think about Rabbi by the Rabbi, buys the Rabbi. This is interesting. Buys the Rabbi, the doch according to you, the Amit you say, Malach Hamavis, Mali Hocha, Mali Hosa. Then I want to understand the conversation that Rab Amma Bamamel had with Rab Amma. Two Arayim. Their conversation doesn't fit in with your shit. Your shit and what Rabba said. I mean, what kind of kasha is that? So Rabba, they don't agree with Rabba. They hold like Abaya holds. But Rabba says that's what Rabba said. All I said was what Rabba said. So when you're asking me a kasha about me and had a discussion about Baba which only will fit in according to where Abaya understood. Only in Abaya shita, it's not much of a question. But nevertheless, Abai is asking you, what was we had just before? Rab Abba Mamal asked Rab Ami a question about Shomer Shemashal Shomer. He said, how can you say that Shomer Shemashal Shomer? In our Mishnah, it says clearly that if that a Shomer Shomer, the middle guy is totally potter, and the Shomer pays the middle guy. That's clearly the Shomer Shemashal Shomer is potter. So we answered that it's talking about where the original owner said, you know what? If you want to lend to my, I don't mind. I don't mind, right? Because ain't it in this case, he says, I don't mind the Pekadon sitting by him. That was a discussion. He says, according to you, Rav Malay, instead of having that, what Shimon the Sefer said, look, it was an anus, right? Malach Hamavis, Mali Hacha, Mali Hasan. You should have said, I gave it to the Shoyel. It died natural causes. It was it died natural causes, and I imparted not because I needed you to agree to this thing here. What happens? It's not about a guy. We're talking about Malach Hamavis, Mali Hacha, Mali Hasan. So therefore, he says, I should be potter. Why do you have to have this whole conversation? So Rava says that whole conversation is only a question if you follow you. You said the logic was I don't want my Pekadon to be anywhere else. So we had to learn that the original owner said, I don't mind if the Pekadon is singing the other person. I don't hold that's a taina. My taina is that the guy said I don't trust the other guy with a shua. If I don't trust the other guy with a shua, then what's helped me? How do I know how he died? How do I know how he died? The question is, how did he die? And this guy is prepared to swear died from natural causes. I don't believe him. So therefore, according to me, the whole conversation never happened in the first place.
It's irrelevant.
Exactly. You said the whole word is I don't want my friend anywhere else. Ema, therefore, equal Israel. That's why it's a valid question. How come and the Seicher gave it to the Shoyel? We say that the Seicher is potter. The Balabos can say, I don't want my Pekot in anybody else's hand. So we have to answer the Balabos agree. But the D, according to me, I say, I'm heavily sure, I don't care if the Pekot is someone else's hand. That part is all right. The part is, how do I know what happened? How do I know it was an einus? Because I don't trust him. Like what's the question? So what if the seichel, gave it to the certain else and it was not natural causes? Malach hamovas, malach malachim. How do I know? How do you know that there's a malach hamovas involved here? Mostly Rambam Chomer has a question that says, hell, if you took the animal up, Larasha took it and you took it up to the top of the mountain, like the cliffs over there, and then enough for the animal fell, you should never put the animal up there in the first place. And therefore, you were chayv. This is called a pshir. Totally negligent to bring up an animal in such a treacherous place. The precipitous is so steep, you shouldn't have done it. Ha Mesa Kedarka. What happens if it didn't fall off the cliff? But it was chilas of a pshir, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. But what happened then was it died, natural causes. Hareza oinus a potter. Your potter. Isn't that an ayah to Ravad that malach hamavas, mali hocham, mali hosam? Taka, your pshir regarding falling. Abaye said in this case that the chayla din should be, that according to everybody, you're chayiv. Right? Because the stale air, the foul air, and all that kind of stuff, especially on top of mountain thin air, and it says, it seems to me if it would have died natural cause, you're potter. Let's say that and the Bai said before, we attributed that maybe it wasn't Malach Hamavas, maybe because you changed the atmosphere that's too thin, or inami ultra the hard the hard work, the effort that required to climb a mountain. It's called that's a killed animal. According to Bai, we throw in other variables. We're talking about here that everybody brings up their animals there because the grazing there is perfect for the animals, and therefore, since everybody does it, it's not considered pshi at all. Says the Gemara, so why if it falls you say it's chayiv? Because the pshi, what pshi? Everybody brings animals there to graze. It was an accident. You know that it's treacherous. On the one hand, it's fantastic for grazing. So everyone holds on the reins or something. You hold on the animal properly. If you held on the animal, it wouldn't have fallen. So it's your problem. But like you didn't hold it properly. It says also if you say if it went up on its own. The Reisha says that here it talks about you brought the animal up to the top, so it was a pshir. The Reisha says if the animal went up on its own, it's not your fault and you are potter. It is your fault. You should have held on to the animal, should have gone up there in the first place. Also, the Reisha you should have held on to it. But also you did hold on to it, and nevertheless it fell down. Therefore, you are potter. You held on to it all the time, going up and going down. The Mishnah concludes, I don't like this. The whole thing doesn't smell right. The Seicher should make a profit out of somebody else's animal. It just doesn't sound right at all. So unfair. It's like Midas Daim. The original owner, Nebuch, has to lick his wounds. He lost an animal, and the guy that rented from him is making a profit on it. He said the whole thing collapsed. It doesn't make sense. It in this case, we're going to pass from Rabbi Yossi against Tanakama. So Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Yehuda, said to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to have too many conversations. Rabbi Yehuda's own son should talk to him. Said, Amrit lan mashmei de Shmuel. You once told us in the name of Shmuel that Cholok Hoy Rabbi Yossi af b'rishayim. No, we had two missions here. The second mission was where Reuven rented it out to Shimon, and Shimon lent it to Levi, and then there was an accident. Oinus happened, so Shimon swears. So Shimon tells whatever he tells Reuven, and he's potted, and then Levi. Now, is a shoyel has to pay Shimon. Rabbi Yossi says that's not right. That's more machlekes. The very first Mishnah we had, where the shomer says to the owner, here, it was stolen, I'm potted, but I don't want to swear. So here, shilim, I'm paying you, but I don't want to swear. And the din is if they ever catch the ganef, not only the ganef has to pay the principal to the shomer, which is fair enough, but the penalties, any penalties that come with it, goes to the shomer. You told me Rabbi Yossi doesn't like that either, because the guy's making a profit of somebody else's animal. So says the Gemara, to tell me. So he asked his father. In that case, also Allah to be passed Rabbi Yossi in both cases or not? Amalei said, yes, you're right. He argues also in the first case, if he paid and didn't want to swear, but Allah in the first. Something we change around the whole mission. We let the whole mission in Gemara Not a word.
According to the Tanakh.
Yeah. Had you not learned this little Gemara here, you wouldn't even know Rabbi Yossi argues. Equal, I mean, look, I'm going to blast this is only Rabbi Blaz's version. However, Rabbi Yechon says no, that the first mission there's no argument. The first mission is very different. Why? Because it came at a cost to the Shemer. In the second mission, Rabbi Yossi feels that it's totally right. What did it cost the Shemer? Nothing. It's nothing. He's making a whole profit out of someone else's cow and it cost him nothing. In the first case, the shamer took a risk. Who will ever find the ganef? And he paid it out. So therefore, he's entitled to get any benefits that come from it. He did such a nice thing. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi agrees with the Tanakhama. There's no machlekes at all. That's what Rabbi Yechon says. Not like Shmuel and Rabbi Lazar.
See, is the owner forced to take it in that case? If he says, I don't want to swear, I'll pay you.
The shamer says that, yeah.
The owner says, it's okay, you go.
Oh, he can be meichel shvu.
Okay, so then.
But if the owner says, I don't want the money, I want you to swear, the owner doesn't have the right to say that.
Right, so I'm saying the owner gained something there. He didn't have to take the money. If he wanted to take the risk.
Yeah, the owner can say, I'm meichel you the shvu, and I don't want your money, then yeah, right. Yeah. However, we learned before the Gemara that when it says shilim doesn't mean paid. Omar. So Gemara asks right here. Gemara that you just said shekvar shilim. Shilim means like shilim. Like you're now telling us a whole loop shot in the Mishnah. But we learned before the Mishnah is as soon as he said I'm ready to pay, even if he didn't pay the kachiganeth, it's his. Now Rabbi Yechon's whole word is why Rabbi Yossi made it in the Mishnah because shekvar shilim he already paid. In the same Rabbi Yechon said, "Lo shilim shilim mamish alakim Omar ready mishal." As soon as he said, "I'm ready to pay," have a lo shilim. So you might be right. Let's rephrase Rabbi Yechon. Even the fact that he said it, he didn't know the catch the Ghana straight away, so he was prepared to pay. That's enough. That's enough that he's entitled to that thing.